Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy with Modern with Randy, and today I'm going over Arclight Phoenix. Basically, kind of going over this deck, why you should be playing it if you have some RCQs coming up, as well as just what you can expect to see from this deck and what you can expect to see at your RCQs. This is probably one of the most played decks currently for Pioneer. I know it's at least in the top 3 at all times, basically just because of how resilient it is. Its play patterns, as well as it just being a relatively cheap deck as well to play. Most of this deck is, I want to say, under $5 per card or per place of the card. Not counting lands, of course. But go over this deck. We'll start off with the namesake card, Arclight Phoenix. So it's a 4 mana, 3 generic, and a red for a 32 flying haste. Nothing too exciting about that as a whole. The big thing about this card is at the beginning of your combat beginning of combat on your turn, if you cast 3 or more instant or sorcery cards this turn, or spells, this turn, you can return it from the graveyard to the battlefield. So basically, what this deck is trying to do is get Arclight Phoenix into the graveyard, cast a bunch of cantrips or removal spells, things like that, and then get to have a 3/2 flyer with haste come back for free. Essentially getting to skip on mana for playing the card, as well as then getting the intrinsic value of wanting to play cantrips, removal spells, things like that you're already wanting to do in a game of Magic. So to go along or to complement this, we have our Arclight Phoenix, we have Ledger Shredder, which lets us connive every time someone plays a second spell in a turn. Obviously good when you're playing a bunch of one-drop spells, being able to connive, discard Arclight Phoenix, make your Ledger Shredder bigger, make it a threat, as well as it being a great blocker. We also have the newest addition to this deck, which isn't new anymore, but the Picklock Prankster, which we're basically just playing for its adventure cost, or its adventure side is what we're really playing this card for. It's an instant spell for 1 in blue. You build the top 4 cards of your library, and then you put an instant, sorcery, or fairy card from among them from the mill cards into your hand. So it's filling up your graveyard for things like Treasure Cruise, so we can delve, be able to draw 3 cards. It lets you find Brazen Borrower, it lets you find removal spells, cantrips, as well as being able to find the other Picklock Pranksters, because that is a fairy itself. So being able to find Picklock Prankster with Picklock Prankster is kind of good, lets you keep going, essentially filling up your graveyard. Same thing with being able to find Brazen Borrower, which is kind of here as a catch-all. Some lists are playing Brazen Borrower, some are not. This is essentially the list that I'm going to be taking and running through RCQs with, so I figured I'd just show you my list since that's what I'm basing a lot of my discussion and topics about for this deck. Brazen Borrower is one of those things where like you see it, you sometimes see it, don't. I like it, but I'm also kind of biased for Brazen Borrower. I played Brazen Borrower a whole bunch back when Temur Rhinos was a thing in Modern, and I absolutely love the card. I always was a big advocate for never cutting it because it just did so much work. And I think the same thing can be said now with Brazen Borrower in Pioneer, just being able to have a 2 mana catch-all to bounce basically any permanent you need to, as well as it just being a 3/1 body in air. We don't have to worry about things like Bowmasters and things like that that are going to ping it down in Pioneer, so I think this is a good threat. Or good threat as well as just the Petty Theft being a good adventure ability. But to go along to help get our Arclight Phoenix here out of the graveyard, we're playing 4 Considers, which lets us surveil a top card. So you can help put Arclight Phoenix into the graveyard. We're also playing Opt, because again, just 1 mana cantrips and sleight of hand, kind of as like our draw spells / card selection spells. And we're playing 4 Treasure Cruise, because it turns out, drawing 3 cards for 1 mana is kind of broken. It's just really good. It's almost like it's a power 9 type level card, if you would. And then we also get to play Fiery Impulse as like a removal spell. This to do 2 damage, and then if we have 2 or more instants or sorceries in our graveyard, just 3 damage instead, which with this deck it's very easy to have that turned on. And we're also playing Lightning Axe. Gives us a way to discard or play Phoenixes that are stuck in our hand into the graveyard. We're also playing a nice little combo here in the sense of Temporal Trespass and Galvanic Iteration. So Galvanic Iteration is a red and a blue, then instant, and whenever you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, you may copy that spell, choose additional copies, and it has flashback for a red, blue, and a generic. And we have Temporal Trespass, which is 8 generic and triple blue sorcery, delve, take an extra turn after this one, and then exile Temporal Trespass. So this allows you to set up some like major turns where you can go, you know, play a couple spells. Like we're looking at like turn 5, turn 6 to do this type of thing, where you're gonna play like maybe like opt or whatever, play Galvanic Adoration, then play Temporal Trespass, be able to take 2 additional turns at this one, hopefully be buying back our Phoenixes on this turn, so we're attacking for 3, 6, 9, whatever amount of damage, and then we get to do 2 more attacks after this, and that's usually going to be able to close out the game, or just close the book on that game, and you're going to be able to win, or just your opponent's going to concede after seeing you being able to take 2 extra turns most of the time. Also, I mean, there is some like notable differences of just being able to do Temporal Trespass, just as an extra turn, being able to get a second attack in with Arc-like Phoenixes, things like that, or stabilize the field. It is just a good card overall. And then we also have 2 Spell Pierces, just as a generic little catch-all for it. So the best part about this deck, or the reason why you see this deck as being so popular, or people playing it so much, as opposed to like anything else in the format, is it's very good at finding what it needs. And that's kind of the biggest point, is like with this deck you're constantly seeing most of your deck every game. I know when I play this deck, on average I'm probably seeing 30 to 40 cards a game with this deck, just between Ledger Shredder, Picklock Prankster milling, Treasure Cruise drawing 3 cards, consider Opt, and Sleight of Hand seeing additional 2+ cards. I see a lot of my deck. I'm always able to dig, obviously not always, but you're always able to dig and find whatever you need for the situation. So if I'm facing down a threat where I need a Lightning Axe, it's not hard when we're on turn 3, turn 4, where I'm able to dig and see an extra 6 cards that turn and find the Lightning Axe. Or if I need just a removal spell in general, I can find it, things like that. Like you get to dig and turn through so much of your deck. And then so this deck obviously looks strong as a whole. If you've played Magic before, if you are new to Magic or new to the RCQ season, it might not be inherently obvious like why this is so powerful, or like it doesn't seem like we're playing essentially 9 real threats with Ledger Shredder, or like Phoenix as our 8, and Brazen Borrower as like our 9th threat essentially, and then Black Prankster is a 1/3 is not really something that's going to kill somebody, right? So you might be looking at this and go, okay, but if I just play like some removal spells, my opponent will never be able to kill me. Which sounds great in theory, except that Arc-like Phoenix continuously gets to come back with this deck. It is very easy to trigger Arc-like Phoenix from like turn 3 onward, just consistently. So like this deck just being able to put a recursive threat and essentially blinking your opponent's removal, like yes, they'll get to remove an Arc-like Phoenix once or twice, great. I'm going to play 3 more cantrips, things I already want to do. I'm going to kill one of your creatures, Opt, Picklock Prankster, or start Freddy the Fae off of Picklock Prankster, and now I have Eating coming back again. That was all things I wanted to do. I wanted to remove your creature, I wanted to see more cards in my deck. So, it is a very powerful deck, it's a very consistent deck. It's what makes it so good, and what makes it a target on its back. Obviously, people are going to be prepared for this deck. I do think, though, you are able to play this deck, or you can afford to pick it up. The deck is very cheap outside the lands. The land base is probably where you spend most of your money, between like the pathways and the steam vents are going to be your most money. Right off the bat, obviously, Spiderwolf Canals just got reprinted, so it does make it incredibly cheaper than what it used to be. And then outside of that, Temporal Trespass and I think Brazen Borrower are your next most expensive cards. Temporal Trespass I think is a $20 card right now at the time of this video, and Brazen Borrower I think is still like a $10 to $20 card. Which obviously you can play without those cards if need be, moving forward or anything like that. But this is just one of these powerful decks that you can see, and it does a lot of things going for it. Now obviously the most obvious answer here is, well, if I remove the graveyard, then how does this deck win, right? And that's where we get to the sideboard. So the sideboard is kind of ever constantly changing as a whole. This is something I've been toying around with, and like the sideboard I've been toying around with so far. So basically our answers to Graveyard Hate, like Rest in Peace, Leyline of the Void, things like that, are just going to be exiling cards in the graveyard or making sure they're not hitting the graveyard. Is we're playing Crackling Drake in the sideboard. It is an X4 for blue, red, flying. When it enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card, and then its power is equal to the total number of instants and sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard. So it doesn't matter that, you know, they're exiling your graveyard from turn 1. He's still going to be a big boy. He's still going to close out games. He's still going to demand an answer. And then we're also playing Young Pyromancer, or Young Peasy, as he often gets called or nicknamed. So whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you make a 1/1 red elemental creature. He's a 2/1 for 1 in a generic. Obviously, our deck is full of instants and sorcery spells because that's what we need to bring back our Phoenixes. So you're just going to be able to create a wide board consistently every turn. It is a 2/1 that demands an answer, unfortunately, for our opponent. And then, so that's basically our game plan moving forward against any kind of graveyard hate shenanigans or anything like that. As well as, like, you can still just cast Arclight Phoenix as a 3/2 haste flying creature. It still is an annoying creature to deal with. Same thing with our Leisure Treasures too, like, graveyard hate doesn't really hurt them. We're still able to deny, we're still able to make it big, we're still able to make it a threat, so, like, you still have answers, obviously. And then we have our @1 Ashiok as our kind of graveyard hate against the other Phoenix decks, things like that. The Phoenix matchup or mirror matchup is kind of weird. It's definitely a lot of posturing, and it's a lot of work to figure out who's ahead and where you need to be at in that matchup. Honestly, it's a little different, a little weird, and it's definitely something that's going to be hard for you to figure out. I don't have any super insightful knowledge to pass down, like, oh, if you just do this, you win the matchup every time. It's very grindy, and it's very interesting of, do you trigger your opponent's Leisure Treasure? How do you get around not doing that because it demands an answer? All these, like, weird little things you can do type situations, and it's a very complex game. But we do have 2 Anger the Gods for all these small creature decks running around. I know, you know, Burn's been back up on the menu. We have a bunch of, like, the Gruul aggro decks running around. We still have Amalia combos. Also, this is what is Anger the Gods is great against, because it exiles the creatures. They would die. Kind of what we're just doing is a little good catch-all against all these little aggro decks, along with the Amalia combos. And then I'm playing 1 Tears of the Valakut. That's instant, 1 in a red. Can't be countered, and it deals 5 damage to target creature with flying. So I'm playing just 1 of these right now. I don't think this is necessarily a great answer to Vein Ripper. I think it is an answer to Vein Ripper. I think that because I see so many cards, that it's not necessarily a bad idea to have, and it can't be countered, right? So, like, I can play this on an empty board, and, like, their ward doesn't matter. That's what's great about this. I'm not sure if this is still what I want to be on. This is something I've been trying out. I know some of the other Phoenix lists have been trying it out. Some have not, some have cut it, things like that. You'll see a lot of different sideboard cards in Phoenix. Because we turn through our deck so much, the deck just gets to see so many cards that you can afford to play these 1-ofs, 2-ofs. Anyone who's ever played Legacy or looked at Legacy, like the Delver list, where you see 15 1-ofs in their sideboard because they have Brainstorm, Ponder, Preordain, just get to see so many cards in their deck. That's the same kind of theory here, is we see so much of our deck. We're able to nag or grab what we need when we need it, in theory, right? And then we're also playing a Aether Gust against the green and red spells. Basically just excuse me, a good catch-all. Works against, like, the big green decks that sometimes keep popping up here and there. It's also good against Nib to Light decks that are coming back and kind of showcasing out. Just a good little catch-all, and catch all the red spells as well. And then we have 2 negates here for the control matchup. For the other spell-based matchups, essentially helps us against Lotus Field. Couldn't think of the name of it. Really nice just to counter their spells. We got 2 disputes, same kind of concept, just more counter magic. Lotus Field against control, things like that. I do think I might actually cut down a mystical dispute and go 1 more negate. I just like negate a little bit better. The hard counter feels better. And then I have 1 Beacon Bolt. Again, this is something I'm trying out. This is red, blue, and generic sorcery, and it deals damage equal to number of instant sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard. It also has a jump start, so you can cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a card and additional paying to other costs in exile. So essentially a little flashback, if you will. Just a good card against the Vein Ripper decks, the Vein Ripper, and against the Shieldred decks. Just another good answer to those creatures, things like that. Something I'm trying out. I've not been super impressed by it, but it is something I'm still working on. Like I said, I have a couple flex spots I consider my sideboard right now, but this is a generic sideboard. You're going to see Crackling Drake, you're going to see Young Pyromancer. Those are very common. Anger the Gods or Brotherhood's End, you'll see a lot in the decks. You'll see Negates and Mystical Disputes in the deck. And then everything else is kind of a little sideboard, like flexibility. You'll see Ashiok a lot. Sometimes it gets cut. Sometimes they're playing 2 of them. Sometimes they're playing some other kind of graveyard hate for the other Phoenix decks. But this is essentially the Phoenix deck that you'll see running around in your tournaments. It's a great deck to play. I encourage anybody who has the ability to build this deck to pick it up. It has a lot of good, like, you have a lot of good games where you get to do like the nuts or the crazy thing where, like, your turn 3 bringing back 2 or 3 Arclight Phoenixes, and you're just smashing your opponent's face and they're just going, I don't have anything to beat this. This is dumb. Why is this deck so allowed? And then you're going turn 4 Treasure Cruise, drawing 3 cards for 1 mana, and your opponent says like, cool man, I'm glad you got to put 6 power into play and draw 3 cards for 1 mana. I don't know how to combat this. This is stupid. You get to like those, but I will say the deck is relatively simple to pick up in the sense of like you can pick it up, you can play it, and you probably have a good like 80% understanding of the deck. And the other 20% is really knowing the deck and learning it and playing it constantly and jamming games and just figuring out what you're doing. You will lose with this deck for sure. Like, this is not just I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to win every game and I'm going to be, 5-0, 10-0 in my RCQ. But it does, you have the chance and opportunity to probably win just about any game that you're playing against or any match you're playing against. Obviously, you have some worse matchups than the others, of course, but I will say this deck has the ability just to either dominate or feel like it's the worst deck possible, depending on how you draw, how you play, and how you understand the situation you're in each turn. It's a very good deck to pick up, though. I do encourage you guys to try it out. Even if you don't want to play this deck, I encourage you just to pick it up and try it out, so that way you can learn how to play against it and kind of learn the weaknesses it has, which I will say is not a lot. Being able to see so many cards gives this deck a very wide range of being able to answer pretty much anything you're throwing at it. But as always, guys, I am Randy. If you like what you see, if you like what I'm doing, please give me a subscribe, give me a like. Let me know what you're going to be taking to your RCQs. Hopefully you're able to go to one this weekend. I know they're starting to finally get them rolled out. I'm happy. Love to hear like what you guys are doing, what you're playing, what you're seeing. Give a like, give a comment. Just let me know what's going on.